Daniel almost left before she spoke. The chair across from her was empty, but he felt watched anyway. Not by her. By the room. By the quiet way people measure a man sitting alone with a wedding ring he still hadn't taken off. His phone buzzed. Another message. Another apology. Another careful excuse. He slipped it back into his pocket and stared at the table. 2 cups of coffee. One already going cold. He shouldn't have come. He knew that now. Then she looked up. Not curious. Not judging. Just tired in a way he understood. "You can sit," she said. It wasn't an invitation. It felt more like permission. And for reasons he still can't fully explain, he did. Daniel arrived early because he always arrived early. It wasn't a personality trait. It was a habit built out of survival. If he got somewhere first, he could pick the corner table, the seat facing the door, the one where no one could surprise him. He could decide what to do with his hands. He could rehearse his face. He walked into the café and immediately regretted it. Not because it was loud. It wasn't. It was warm, low-lit, filled with small conversations that stayed politely contained. The kind of place couples liked. The kind of place that made a single man feel like he'd wandered into someone else's life by mistake. He told himself it didn't matter. He was here for coffee. That was all. The barista smiled at him like she had done nothing wrong, and he hated that he noticed. She was young. She probably didn't even see him as a man. Just another customer, a tired one. "What can I get you?" she asked. Daniel's mouth opened, but his brain stalled for half a second, like it always did lately. Like his mind was still adjusting to the idea that he had to answer for himself now. 2 coffees, he said. The barista blinked. 2? Daniel's throat tightened. He almost corrected himself. Almost said, "Sorry, 1. I don't know why I said that." But it was too late. The words had already left him. "Yeah," he said. 2. He paid before she could ask anything else. He carried both cups carefully, like they were fragile. Like if he spilled even a drop, it would confirm something about him he couldn't afford to admit. He chose a table near the window, not too close, not too hidden. A place that looked normal. A place that didn't scream loneliness. He sat down. He stared at the cup in front of him. The one meant for someone else. The other cup steamed. The air smelled like espresso and cinnamon and other people's plans. His phone sat face down on the table. He didn't want to look at it. He already knew what would be there, but his hand moved anyway. Almost on its own. A message. "Hey Daniel, I'm really sorry. Something came up. I don't think I can make it today." He didn't even need to open it fully. The preview was enough. He read it twice anyway, like maybe the words would change if he looked harder. His jaw clenched. He didn't reply. Not right away. He stared out the window instead, watching people pass by with bags, with dogs, with hands linked together. A woman laughed at something a man said. It wasn't forced laughter. It was easy. It made Daniel feel like he was watching a language he used to speak fluently. He let out a slow breath. This wasn't the first time. It was never the first time. He had stopped counting after the 5th cancellation. Not because he didn't care, because keeping track felt pathetic, like he was collecting proof, and it wasn't always a cancellation. Sometimes it was worse. Sometimes they showed up. They sat across from him and smiled politely, like they were meeting him for a job interview. They asked about his work, his hobbies, the weather. Then they asked about his son. And when he said the words, "I'm a widower something," shifted. It was subtle. Always subtle. Their shoulders would stiffen. Like grief was contagious. Their eyes would soften in that way people thought was kind but wasn't. It was pity disguised as empathy. Then came the careful questions. How long has it been? Do you think you're ready? What happened? As if the details would determine whether he was safe to be around. As if his life needed to be audited before they decided he deserved another chance. Daniel had learned how to answer. 2 years. Car accident. Yes, I'm fine. No, I'm not looking for a replacement. No, I'm not broken. He could say all of it with a calm voice and a steady face. Then they would nod. They would sip their coffee. They would glance at his hands, at the ring he still wore, and later, the message would come. You're a really great guy. I just don't think I'm the right person for you. Or the classic one. I'm not ready for something that serious, as if his grief made him heavy, as if loving someone who died made him dangerous, as if being a father made him too much. Daniel understood it, in a way. He wasn't stupid. He knew what he looked like from the outside. A man in his 30s with a child and a dead wife. A story that already had a tragedy built in. A life that came with responsibilities most people his age still avoided. But understanding didn't make it easier. It didn't stop the sting. It didn't stop the quiet humiliation of sitting in cafes like this, with 2 coffees and no one to drink the second one. His phone buzzed again. He didn't pick it up. He knew it would be another message from the same woman. Another line about guilt. Another excuse padded with politeness. He didn't want her politeness. He wanted honesty. Or silence. Anything that didn't feel like being slowly erased. He pushed the second cup a little farther away from him. His fingers curled around the first cup. The heat pressed into his palms, grounding him. He took a sip. It was bitter. Too hot. He drank anyway. A laugh rose from a table behind him. It wasn't directed at him, but his shoulders tensed anyway, the way they always did now when he heard people enjoying themselves. He didn't want to be bitter. He wasn't that kind of man. He used to be the one who made other people laugh. He used to be steady, reliable, calm. The guy people leaned on. After Emily died, people still leaned on him. At the funeral, they hugged him too tightly and told him he was strong. They said it like it was a compliment, like he had a choice. They brought casseroles and offered babysitting and asked if he needed anything. Daniel thanked them. Then they went back to their lives. And he stayed. He stayed in the house where Emily's shampoo still sat in the shower for months because he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. He stayed in the kitchen where she used to hum while cooking. He stayed in the bedroom where her side of the bed remained untouched because sleeping on it felt like a betrayal. And he stayed for Noah. That was the part no one saw. They saw a grieving husband. They didn't see the father sitting on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m, holding a toddler who couldn't understand why his mother wasn't coming back. They didn't see Daniel learning how to braid hair by watching YouTube videos, because Emily always did it. They didn't see him standing in the grocery store aisle staring at 2 different brands of formula like the decision might ruin his son's life. They didn't see him biting the inside of his cheek so hard it bled because he refused to cry in front of Noah. They didn't see him driving to daycare with a smile on his face, then gripping the steering wheel afterward until his knuckles turned white because the silence in the car felt like a scream. Daniel had survived. But surviving didn't mean he felt alive. And after 2 years, people started saying things, not cruelly, never cruelly. That would have been easier. They said it gently, like they were trying to help. You deserve happiness again. Emily would want you to move on. Noah needs a mother figure. Daniel hated that one the most, because Noah didn't need a mother figure. Noah needed his mother, the real one. The one who smelled like lavender and sang off-key and kissed his forehead every night. But Emily wasn't coming back, and Daniel couldn't keep living like his life ended with hers. So he tried. He downloaded the apps. He wrote the awkward bio. He chose photos where he looked normal, where he didn't look like a man who had been cracked open and stitched back together. He went on dates. He forced himself to talk about movies and travel and favorite foods, even though none of it felt important anymore. And every time he started to think, maybe this is okay, maybe I can do this, something went wrong. The moment they realized he came with history, they stepped back, like his love for Emily was a ghost sitting between them. Daniel didn't blame them, but it still made him feel like a problem no one wanted to solve. He stared at the second coffee again. The steam had faded. The surface was still cold. He picked up his phone and opened the message fully. Hey Daniel, I'm really sorry. Something came up. I don't think I can make it today. You're sweet, and I feel terrible. I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of thing. I hope you understand. Daniel read it slowly. He didn't feel angry. That was the worst part. He felt tired. He typed to reply anyway. No worries. Take care. He stared at the words before sending them. His thumb hovered. Then he hit send. A clean ending. No questions. No guilt. No begging for clarity. He locked the phone and placed it back on the table. His gaze drifted to the door. A couple walked in, shaking rain from their jackets. The woman kissed the man's cheek, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Daniel looked away quickly, like he'd seen something private. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a second. He could leave. He should leave. But something in him didn't move right away. Some stubborn part of him stayed seated, like if he got up too fast he might break. He breathed in slowly. The café smelled like warmth, like other people's lives. His chest tightened, and he pressed his tongue against the roof of his mouth until the feeling dulled. Then he heard it, a chair scraping gently against the floor. Not loud, not dramatic, just the sound of someone shifting. Daniel opened his eyes. At the table beside his, a woman sat alone. She hadn't been there earlier. Or maybe she had, and he hadn't noticed. She had a book open in front of her, but she wasn't reading it. Her fingers rested on the edge of the page like she'd forgotten what she was doing. Her hair was pulled back in a loose tie, not styled, not trying. Her face looked pale in the soft light. She wasn't staring at him. Not exactly, but her eyes kept flicking toward the empty chair across from him, the untouched coffee, the way he sat like he didn't know what to do with his own body. Daniel felt exposed. He straightened slightly, instinctively pulling himself together. Then her gaze lifted and met his, and something about it stopped him. There was no curiosity in her expression, no soft pity, no forced kindness, just recognition, like she understood the shape of what was happening without needing an explanation. She hesitated, as if deciding something. Then she spoke. "You can sit," she said. Her voice was quiet, firm but not sharp. Daniel blinked. "What?" She nodded toward the chair across from her table. "It's empty," she said, "if you don't want to sit alone." Daniel stared at her. For a moment he didn't know what to do. His instincts screamed at him to refuse, to keep his distance, to avoid the awkwardness of being seen, but his body didn't move away. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. The woman waited. She didn't smile. She didn't smile. Jockton softened the offer with jokes. She just watched him with the calm patience of someone who knew what silence could do to a person. Daniel swallowed. He should say no. He should leave. Instead, he heard himself speak. "Are you sure?" The woman gave a small nod. "Yes," she said. Daniel stood slowly. His legs felt stiff, like he'd been sitting there for hours. He picked up his coffee. Then, after a brief pause, he picked up the second one too. He walked over and placed it carefully on her table. "I ordered two," he said, as if that explained anything. The woman's eyes dropped to the cup, then back to him. "I figured," she said. Daniel pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe noise wrapped around them, distant and soft. The clink of spoons, the hum of conversation, the low music playing overhead. Daniel looked at her book. The cover was worn, bent at the corners like it had been carried around for a long time. He didn't ask what she was reading. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask why she'd offered, because he was afraid that if he asked too many questions, the moment would disappear, like it would turn into something else, something polite, something fake. So he just sat there, holding his coffee cup like it was an anchor. The woman took a sip of the coffee he brought over. She didn't flinch at the bitterness. She drank it like she needed it. Then she set it down and looked at him again. "You look like you were about to leave," she said. Daniel let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but wasn't. "I was," he admitted. The woman nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something. "I'm Clare," she said. Daniel's throat tightened again, but this time it wasn't from humiliation. It was from something else, something unfamiliar. "Daniel," he replied. Claire studied him for a moment longer than most people would. Not rudely, just honestly. Like she wasn't afraid of what she might see. Then she leaned back slightly in her chair. "You don't have to explain," she said. Daniel stared at her. He didn't know what she meant, but his chest felt heavy anyway, and for the first time in a long time, he realized how badly he wanted to talk. Not about the weather, not about hobbies, not about the version of himself that didn't scare people away. He wanted to talk like a person who had lived through something and hadn't fully returned from it. He didn't speak yet, but his hands stopped shaking. And that alone felt like something. Daniel didn't know where to put his eyes. Claire didn't look away from him, but she wasn't staring either. She just sat there, steady, like she had time. Most people filled silence fast. They rushed to smooth it out. She didn't. He cleared his throat. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not," she said. Her voice stayed level. No effort to reassure him beyond that. He nodded once, though he wasn't sure what he was agreeing to. Up close, he noticed small things. The faint crease between her brows, like it had been there a while. The way her hands rested flat against the table, fingers slightly curled inward. No ring. A thin silver bracelet that looked worn, not decorative. "You don't usually invite strangers to your table," he said. It came out more like a statement than a question. "No," she replied. "I don't." He waited for her to explain. She didn't. Instead, she took another sip of coffee. It had cooled. She didn't comment on that either. Daniel let the quiet stretch again. It felt different now, less sharp. "I'm guessing," she said slowly, "she didn't come." He felt it in his stomach. That small drop. "No," he said. Claire nodded. No surprise there. "I'm sorry," she said. It wasn't heavy with pity, just simple, clean. Daniel shrugged, but the movement felt forced. "It's fine." Claire's eyebrow lifted slightly. Not accusing, just noticing. He looked down at the table. "It's not the first time," he added, before he could stop himself. There it was. A crack. He hadn't meant to give her that. Claire didn't jump on it. She didn't lean forward or soften her face. She just listened. Daniel felt something shift inside his chest, like a door unlatched without warning. "She texted," he said. "Said something came up." He almost smiled. Almost. That usually means I came up. Claire let out a quiet breath through her nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. "Yeah," she said. "It usually does." He glanced at her then. "Really looked. You been stood up too?" She tilted her head. "Not exactly." Daniel waited. She traced the rim of the coffee cup with her finger. Slow. Thoughtful. "They show up," she said. "That's the difference." Her eyes lifted to his. "They just leave differently." Daniel didn't ask what that meant. He could guess. People didn't reject you the same way twice. They found new words each time. "I don't think I'm what they're looking for," she continued. Her tone didn't change. It wasn't defensive. It was factual. Daniel felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected. Curiosity. Not about her flaws. About her story. "That's a vague thing to look for," he said quietly. Claire's mouth moved, almost a smile. "Not when you're very clear about what you can't give." There was a weight in the way she said it. Daniel felt his chest tighten again, but this time it wasn't about him. He didn't push. He didn't ask. Instead, he said, "I have a son." The words landed between them, solid. Claire didn't blink. "How old?" she asked. "4." She nodded once. Daniel watched her face carefully, waiting for it. That shift, that hesitation. It didn't come. She didn't lean back. She didn't say, "Wow," or "That's a lot," or "That must be hard." She just said, "That's a good age." Something in his shoulders loosened. "Is it?" he asked. She gave him a small look. "They still think you know everything." He felt a short, real laugh escape him before he could catch it. "Yeah," he admitted. for now. Claire studied him again. You still wear it, she said gently. Her eyes flicked to his left hand. Daniel's fingers instinctively curled inward. He hadn't taken the ring off. Not because he thought it would bring Emily back. Not because he was holding on to some impossible hope. It just felt wrong to remove it like it meant nothing. It's not about moving on, he said, more sharply than he intended. Claire didn't flinch. I didn't say it was. He inhaled slowly, steadying himself. Sorry. It's okay. They sat with that for a moment. The cafe door opened again. A rush of cold air slipped inside before the door shut. Daniel felt the old urge to retreat, to shut down before he said too much. But Claire's presence felt grounded, like she wasn't going to tip over if he leaned slightly in her direction. My wife died 2 years ago, he said. He hadn't planned to say it that way. It just came out. Claire's eyes softened, but not in that pitying way he'd grown used to. How? She asked. No hesitation. No apology for asking. Car accident, he said. The words were still blunt. They hadn't dulled with time. Claire nodded once. That's not something you ever plan for, she said. No, he agreed. Silence again. He expected her to offer comfort, to say something about fate or strength or time healing things. She didn't. Instead, she asked, Do you want to be here? The question caught him off guard. Here, he repeated, with someone, she clarified, trying again. Daniel looked down at his hands. He thought about Noah, about the empty side of the bed, about the way evenings stretched too long after his son fell asleep. I don't know, he admitted. It felt honest. Uncomfortable, but honest. Claire nodded slowly, as if that answer made sense. That's probably the right place to start, she said. He looked up at her. You? He asked. She held his gaze this time. I can't have children, she said. No build-up. No softness around it. Daniel felt the words land. Oh, he said quietly. Claire's jaw tightened just slightly, like she was bracing for something. I found out a few years ago, she continued. Medical issue, not temporary. Daniel didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, he managed. She gave a small shrug. Most people are. He heard it then. The tiredness beneath her calm. They say they don't mind, she added. At first. Daniel understood that tone. At first, he echoed. She nodded. Then it becomes a future problem. Something to fix or avoid. Daniel felt a strange twist in his chest. Not pity. Not exactly. Recognition. I guess we both come with disclaimers, he said. Claire's lips curved slightly. Yeah, she said. We do. They sat there, two people marked in different ways. Daniel realized something slowly. For the first time on a date, or whatever this was, he didn't feel like he was hiding anything. He hadn't softened the truth. He hadn't packaged it. And she hadn't stepped back. Does it scare you? She asked suddenly. What? Trying again. He thought about it. Yes, he said. She nodded. Me too. That simple admission settled something between them. No bravado. No pretending. Just fear sitting openly at the table with them. Daniel glanced at the second coffee cup. It was almost empty now. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. What? Invite me. Claire looked down at her book, then back at him. I know, she said. He waited. She hesitated for the first time since he'd sat down. You looked like you were carrying something heavy, she said finally, and I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Daniel felt his throat tighten again. He nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. I guess I was. The cafe noise seemed to fade slightly. Not because it got quieter, because his mind stopped racing. He realized he hadn't checked his phone in several minutes. He didn't care to. Claire closed her book and slid it aside. I'm not offering anything, she said carefully. Not a solution. Not hope. Her eyes stayed steady on his. But I'm not running either. The words settled deep. Daniel swallowed. He didn't know what this was. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was two people sitting across from each other without flinching. And that felt new. I don't want someone to replace her, he said quietly. Claire nodded. I don't want to replace anyone, she replied. A small breath left his chest. Relief, maybe. They didn't smile at each other. They didn't reach across the table. They just sat there, aware. Daniel felt something inside him shift, not healed, not fixed. Just less alone. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the window. Claire glanced toward it, then back at him. Do you want to walk? She asked. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't loaded. Just an option. Daniel hesitated. He thought about Noah, who would be at his sister's house for another hour. He thought about the empty house waiting for him, the quiet. He looked at Claire. I do, he said. They both stood at the same time, slightly awkward, chairs scraping softly against the floor. Daniel reached for the bill, but Claire shook her head. You already bought coffee, she said. He didn't argue. They walked toward the door side by side, not touching. As they stepped outside, the rain cooled the air around them. Daniel inhaled deeply. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was bracing for impact. He still carried everything. Emily. Noah. The ring on his finger. The fear. But it didn't feel like it was crushing him in that moment. Claire walked beside him quietly, hands in her coat pockets. Neither of them rushed to fill the space. They just walked, and for now, that was enough. The rain wasn't heavy, just persistent. It coated the sidewalk in a thin sheen that reflected streetlights and passing headlights. Daniel walked a half step behind Claire at first, not because he meant to, but because his body still didn't know what to do with another person beside him. Claire didn't seem to notice, or if she did, she didn't make it awkward by slowing down. They walked without a destination. That should have felt pointless, but it didn't. It felt like something he hadn't done in a long time, moving without a reason that involved survival. At the corner, Claire stopped and looked across the street. A small park sat there, half-lit, empty except for a man jogging with his hood up. Do you mind? She asked, nodding toward the park. Daniel shook his head. No. They crossed together. The crosswalk signal blinked fast, impatient. Daniel's instincts told him to hurry, but Claire walked at the same calm pace anyway, as if she refused to be pushed by something as simple as a flashing light. Once they reached the park path, the noise of traffic softened. The trees above them caught some of the rain. Water dripped steadily from the leaves. Claire's shoes made a faint sound against the wet gravel. Daniel kept his hands in his coat pockets. He could feel the ring against his finger. Cold metal. Familiar pressure. He didn't know if he should talk. He didn't know if she expected him to. After a minute, Claire spoke first. How long were you sitting in there before I showed up? She asked. Daniel thought about it. Maybe 20 minutes. Claire nodded slowly. That's a long time to sit with 2 coffees. He let out a quiet breath. It's stupid, he said. It's not, she replied immediately. Daniel glanced at her. Claire's face was turned slightly downward, watching her steps. She wasn't trying to make eye contact to prove a point. She just said it like she meant it. Daniel swallowed. I should have known she wouldn't come. Claire didn't answer right away. Then she said, You didn't know. You hoped. Daniel didn't respond. His throat tightened. Hoping felt like the dumbest thing he still did. He had hoped Emily would wake up in the hospital. He had hoped the doctors were wrong. He had hoped Noah wouldn't remember the worst parts. He had hoped grief would shrink instead of changing shape and staying. He'd hoped, and none of it had mattered. So he tried to stop. But apparently, he hadn't. I'm not good at this, he admitted. Claire's lips moved slightly, not quite a smile. At dating? She asked. At being normal, he said. Claire's gaze lifted briefly to his face. Normal isn't a real thing, she said. It's just what people pretend they are until they go home. Daniel felt something in his chest loosen again. Not relief exactly. More like permission. They walked farther into the park. The path curved. The bench sat under a tree, damp and empty. Claire stopped near it, hesitated, then sat anyway without wiping it off. Her coat took the moisture. She didn't seem to care. Daniel stood there a moment, unsure. Claire looked up at him. "You can sit," she said again. Daniel almost laughed. The same words, but different now. He sat beside her, leaving space between them. Enough space that neither of them had to pretend they were closer than they were. The rain made small ticking sounds against the tree branches overhead. Daniel stared forward. The park lights were dim, and beyond them the city blurred. Claire leaned back slightly, her hands resting in her lap. "So," she said. "What did she say? The one who didn't show up?" Daniel exhaled through his nose. "She said she wasn't ready," he replied. Claire nodded like she'd heard it before. "She asked if I understood," he added, like it was some kind of favor. Claire's mouth tightened. "She wanted you to comfort her," she said. Daniel glanced at her. "What?" Claire looked at him with quiet certainty. She didn't just cancel. She wanted to feel like a good person while doing it. Daniel stared at the ground for a moment. That hit too close. Because he'd done that too in different ways. He'd said soft things to people he was rejecting, not because they deserved softness, but because he didn't want to feel cruel. Claire's voice stayed calm. "You didn't answer much, did you?" Daniel shook his head. "No." "Good." Daniel didn't know why, but her approval felt strangely grounding. Like he wasn't crazy for being tired of the performance. They sat in silence again. A couple walked past on the path, laughing softly. The woman's umbrella tilted, covering the man too. They moved like they'd done it 1,000 times. Daniel watched them until they disappeared into the dark. Claire didn't comment. She didn't follow his gaze. But after a moment she said, "Do you still love her?" Daniel froze. The question wasn't cruel. It wasn't intrusive in the way most people ask things. Claire didn't sound curious. She sounded like she needed to know the answer for herself, like it mattered to the shape of whatever was happening. Daniel's fingers curled slightly inside his pocket. "Yes," he said. The word came out without hesitation. Claire nodded once. Daniel stared forward, then added quietly, "I don't think that goes away." Claire's gaze stayed on him. "I don't think it should," she said. Daniel's breath caught. That wasn't the answer he expected. Most people treated love like a room you had to empty before you could let anyone else in. Like it was disrespectful to carry it forward. Claire didn't seem to believe that. Daniel looked at her. "You're not uncomfortable with that?" he asked. Claire's eyes stayed steady. "No," she said. "I'm uncomfortable with people who pretend they didn't love someone." Daniel didn't speak. His throat felt tight again, but he didn't want to show it. He swallowed hard. Claire leaned her head back against the tree trunk behind the bench. "My last boyfriend told me he could live without kids," she said. Daniel stayed quiet, listening. "He said it like he was brave," she continued. "Like he was doing something noble." Her voice remained even, but something sharper lived underneath. "And then one day," she said, "we were in a grocery store, in the cereal aisle, and a kid ran past us, maybe 6 or 7. Loud, annoying, sticky hands, the whole thing." Daniel pictured it. Claire's eyes stayed on the dark path ahead. "And he just watched him," she said. "Not like he hated it, like he wanted it." She paused. "And I knew right there. I knew he was lying to me, or lying to himself." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What happened?" he asked. Claire shrugged, but it wasn't casual. "He didn't break up with me," she said. "Not immediately. He dragged it out, started being distant, started acting like I was the one asking too much." Daniel's stomach tightened. "He eventually said he didn't think we were compatible," Claire added. "He said it kindly, like it was a mutual decision." Daniel exhaled slowly. "That's awful," he said. Claire nodded once. "It was clean. That's what made it worse." Daniel looked down at his hands. He thought about how grief had been messy, how it had ruined him in quiet ways, how it had left him raw and exposed. But rejection like that was different. It didn't break you openly. It made you question whether you were ever worth staying for in the first place. Claire's voice was quieter now. People don't like broken things, she said. Daniel's chest tightened. He almost said, "You're not broken." But the words felt too easy, too shallow, like a compliment people threw at someone to make themselves feel better. Instead, he said, "They don't like complicated things." Claire glanced at him. Her eyes held something unreadable. "Same thing," she replied. Daniel sat back, feeling the dampness seep through his coat into his shoulders. He didn't move away. He let himself feel the cold. After a moment, he said, "I'm sorry." Claire's gaze stayed on him. "For what?" "For that," Daniel said, gesturing vaguely, like he didn't have the words. Claire looked away again. "You don't need to be sorry," she said. "You didn't do it." Daniel hesitated. Then he admitted, "Sometimes I think I did." Claire's head turned slightly. "What do you mean?" Daniel stared forward. The park lights blurred in the rain. "I think maybe I waited too long," he said, "to try again, to be human." His voice tightened. "And now it's like I don't know how to talk to people. Like I'm always carrying something that makes everyone else step back." Claire's expression didn't change, but her shoulders shifted, subtle. Daniel continued, the words spilling out because he couldn't seem to stop them. "Sometimes I feel like I'm marked," he said. He hated how dramatic it sounded. He almost took it back. But Claire didn't flinch. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "I know that feeling." Daniel's breath left his chest slowly. That simple agreement did something to him. He didn't feel fixed. He didn't feel better. He just didn't feel alone in it anymore. They sat in silence again. The jogger passed them again, breathing hard, shoes slapping wet gravel. He didn't look at them. Claire watched him go, then said, "Your son, does he remember her?" Daniel's throat tightened again. "Yes," he said. Claire waited. Daniel swallowed. "He remembers her voice," he said quietly. "Not clearly, but enough. He'll ask about her sometimes. Usually when I'm not expecting it." Claire nodded. "What do you say?" she asked. Daniel stared down at the ground. "I tell him the truth," he said. "That she loved him. That she still does. That she didn't leave because she wanted to." His voice grew rough, and sometimes he just nods like he understands, and sometimes he cries, and sometimes he gets angry. Daniel rubbed his thumb against his ring without realizing it, and sometimes, he added, he doesn't say anything at all. He'll just sit quietly with his toys like nothing happened. Claire's eyes softened slightly. Not pity, something closer to respect. "That's a lot for a 4-year-old, she said. Daniel nodded once. "It is." Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You're still doing it." Daniel frowned. "Doing what?" "Showing up," Claire replied. Daniel didn't know what to say. He felt his throat tighten again, and he turned his head slightly away so she wouldn't see. He hated being seen, but somehow she was doing it anyway, without forcing him into anything. Claire shifted on the bench, pulling her coat tighter around her. "You don't have to tell me," she said, "but why did you start dating?" Daniel stared forward. He could have lied, could have said companionship, could have said loneliness, but the truth came out before he could polish it. "Because Noah asked me if I was going to be alone forever," he said. Claire's face changed then, just slightly. Not shock. Something deeper. Daniel's jaw clenched. "He said it like it was a question," Daniel continued. "But it wasn't. It was worry." His voice cracked a little, and he hated himself for it. "I didn't want him growing up thinking love just ends," he said. Claire looked down at her hands. She started, then stopped. Daniel glanced at her. "What?" Claire swallowed. "That's a good reason," she said quietly. Daniel stared at her. He didn't feel proud. He felt tired. "It doesn't feel good," he admitted. Claire nodded. "It rarely does." The rain kept falling. Daniel sat there with her, feeling the cold sink into his skin, feeling the dampness of his coat, the heaviness in his chest. And still, he didn't want to leave. That was the strange part. Not because he wanted Claire. Not because he even knew her. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to convince someone he was worth staying for. He was just sitting beside someone who wasn't running. Claire glanced at her phone, then back at him. "I should go soon," she said. "I have an appointment." Daniel nodded. He didn't ask what kind. He didn't want to push. Claire stood first, brushing rainwater from her coat. Daniel stood too, slower, his joints stiff from the cold. They faced each other under the dim park light. Claire's expression stayed calm, but there was something hesitant in her eyes now, like she wasn't used to this part. The part where you decide whether a moment matters enough to continue. Daniel felt his heart beat harder. He didn't want to ask for her number. He didn't want to put pressure on it. But he also didn't want to walk away and pretend this hadn't mattered. Claire spoke first. "Do you want to get coffee again?" she asked. Daniel blinked. Not because he didn't want to, because he hadn't expected her to ask. He nodded once. "Yes," he said. Claire's shoulders loosened slightly, as if she'd been holding her breath. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and held it out. Daniel took it carefully, like it was something delicate. He typed his number in. His hands didn't shake this time. He handed it back. Claire looked at the screen, then at him. "Okay," she said. Daniel nodded. They stood there a moment longer than necessary. Then Claire turned to leave. After 2 steps, she paused and glanced back. "Daniel," she said. He looked up. Claire hesitated, then said, "Don't apologize for still loving her." Daniel felt the words hit him like something warm. He didn't answer right away. His throat closed. Claire didn't wait for a reply. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain. Daniel stood there alone again, but it didn't feel the same as it had in the cafe. He walked back toward the street slowly, the city noise growing louder as he left the park. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. A text. He pulled it out. "This is Claire. Get home safe." Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he typed back, "You too." He put the phone away. The rain soaked through his hair. Cold drops slid down the back of his neck, and still, as he walked toward his car, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not relief. Just a quiet, cautious sense that maybe he wasn't done yet. Daniel drove to his sister's house with the heater on full blast, but he still felt cold. The kind of cold that didn't come from rain. His windshield wipers moved in steady arcs, clearing the glass just long enough for the streetlights to sharpen, then blur again. He kept both hands on the wheel, even when one would have been enough. His phone sat in the cuff holder, screen dark. He didn't touch it. He didn't want to stare at Claire's message like a teenager. He didn't want to turn something quiet into something needy. But every few minutes, his eyes drifted down anyway, as if the phone might light up on its own and tell him what to do next. When he pulled into his sister's driveway, the porch light was on. Warm yellow glow. Familiar. Safe. He sat in the car for a moment before getting out. He could hear Noah's laugh faintly through the closed windows. That sound always did something to him. It didn't erase anything, but it made his life feel real again. Like he wasn't just a man walking through grief. He was a father. A person still needed. He opened the door and stepped into the damp air. His sister Megan opened the front door before he even reached it. She didn't smile right away. She looked him over, eyes narrowing slightly, like she was checking for injury. "You're wet," she said. Daniel nodded. It rained. Megan stepped aside to let him in. No kidding. The warmth hit him immediately. The smell of laundry detergent and whatever Megan had been cooking earlier. The normalcy of it pressed against him, almost uncomfortable. Noah came running down the hallway barefoot, his pajama pants slightly too long, dragging at the floor. "Daddy!" he shouted. Daniel bent down and caught him easily. Noah slammed into his chest with full force, arms wrapping around his neck like he'd been holding his breath all day. Daniel held him tighter than necessary. "Hey, buddy." he murmured into Noah's hair. Noah smelled like bubble bath and crackers. Daniel closed his eyes for a second. Then Noah leaned back, gripping Daniel's face with both hands, forcing him to look. "You're cold," Noah announced. Daniel exhaled softly. "Yeah, a little." Noah frowned, serious. "You should wear your big coat." Daniel nodded like it was an important lesson. "You're right." Noah's gaze dropped to Daniel's hand. His ring. Noah didn't touch it, but his eyes always found it. Like he checked it the way he checked the locks on the doors. Like it was proof of something. Then Noah smiled suddenly and wiggled in Daniel's arms. "Aunt Megan let me have ice cream," he said. Daniel looked up at Megan. Megan lifted her hands. "Don't start." Daniel didn't. He just nodded once, letting it go. Noah slid down to the floor and ran back toward the living room, already distracted. Daniel took off his wet jacket and hung it over the back of a chair. Megan leaned against the counter, watching him quietly. "So," she said, "how was it?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He walked to the sink and washed his hands, even though they weren't dirty. He needed something to do. "It was fine," he said finally. Megan gave him a look. Daniel dried his hands slowly, then turned around. "She didn't show up," he admitted. Megan's face tightened, anger flashing quick. "Are you serious?" Daniel shrugged. It was a small movement, but Megan saw right through it. "That's the third time," she said. Daniel didn't correct her. He wasn't sure if it was the third or the fourth. It blurred together now. Megan pushed off the counter. "Daniel, you don't deserve that." He nodded slightly. "I know." Megan stared at him like she didn't believe him. "You say you know," she said, voice lower now, "but you keep letting it happen." Daniel looked away. Megan softened her tone. "I'm not trying to be mean," she said. I hate watching you get disappointed over and over." Daniel swallowed. "I wasn't disappointed," he lied. Megan's eyebrows rose. Daniel exhaled. "I was," he corrected. "I was disappointed." Megan nodded slowly, like she was accepting the truth and letting it settle. Then she asked, "Are you okay?" Daniel hesitated. He thought about Clare, the bench, the rain, the way she'd said his name like it mattered. "I'm better than I was an hour ago," he said. Megan's expression shifted. Suspicion. What happened in the last hour? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He didn't know why he felt protective of it. It wasn't even a relationship. It wasn't anything yet. But it felt private. "Someone talk to me," he said finally. Megan blinked. "Someone?" Daniel nodded once. "A woman." Megan's face changed again, curiosity now. "Did she ask you for money or try to recruit you into a cult?" Daniel let out a small laugh. It surprised him. The sound felt unfamiliar. "No," he said. Megan studied him carefully. Daniel could tell she was trying to figure out if he was about to get hurt again. "What's her name?" Megan asked. Daniel hesitated. Then, "Clare." Megan repeated it quietly. "Clare." Daniel nodded. "She just sat with me," he said. "She saw what happened. She offered." Megan's eyes softened. "That's kind," she said. Daniel nodded again. He didn't want to talk about it too much. He was afraid if he did, it would start sounding less real. Megan reached for a dish towel and began wiping an already clean counter, the way she did when she was thinking. "You know," she said carefully, "not every woman is going to run away." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I know," he replied. Megan stopped wiping and looked at him. "Do you?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. Megan didn't push further. She just nodded, as if she understood what he couldn't say. Noah's laughter rose again from the living room. The sound was bright, careless. Daniel stared down the hallway toward it. "I should get him home," he said. Megan nodded. I packed his bag. Daniel picked up Noah's small backpack from the floor near the door. It was covered in cartoon dinosaurs. One of the straps was twisted. He fixed it without thinking. Megan watched him do it. "He's a good kid," she said softly. Daniel swallowed. "Yeah." Megan stepped closer, her voice lowering. "Daniel," she said, "if you ever feel like you're drowning, tell me." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't look at her. "I'm not drowning," he said. Megan didn't argue. She just reached out and squeezed his shoulder once, firm, grounding. "Okay," she said. Daniel walked into the living room. Noah was sprawled on the carpet with a toy truck in his hand, his face sticky with ice cream residue. He looked up when Daniel entered. "Are we going home?" Noah asked. "Yes," Daniel said. "Time for bed." Noah groaned dramatically, then rolled onto his stomach. "No!" he whined. Daniel crouched down beside him. "You can bring one toy," Daniel said. Noah's eyes lit up. He grabbed 3 toys immediately and held them to his chest like Daniel hadn't just said one. Daniel didn't fight him. He just took 2 away and left him with the truck. Noah pouted but accepted it. Daniel carried him out to the car, buckled him into his seat, and drove home. The streets were darker now. The rain had slowed, leaving the pavement shining under streetlights. Noah fell asleep halfway there, head tilted to the side, mouth slightly open. Daniel watched him in the rearview mirror at red lights. When he pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always did. Quiet, dark, still. Daniel carried Noah inside, careful not to wake him. Noah's body was warm against his chest, heavy in a comforting way. Daniel carried him up the stairs into his room. The nightlight glowed faintly in the corner. Dinosaur posters on the wall. A small stuffed bear on the pillow. Emily had picked out that bear. Daniel laid Noah down gently, peeled off his shoes, pulled the blanket over him. Noah stirred, eyes half opening. "Daddy?" he mumbled. "I'm here," Daniel whispered. Noah's small hand reached out blindly until it found Daniel's sleeve. He gripped it, not hard, just enough. "Don't go," Noah murmured. Daniel's throat tightened. "I won't," he promised. Noah fell asleep again almost immediately. Daniel stood there in the dim light for a long time. He didn't move. He watched Noah breathe. In and out. Slow, steady. And he felt the familiar ache, the ache that always came when the house got quiet. When Noah was asleep and the rest of the world seemed to move on without them, Daniel walked out of the room slowly and shut the door halfway, leaving it cracked like he always did. Downstairs, the house was cold. He turned on a lamp in the living room. The light hit the framed photo on the shelf. Emily holding Noah as a baby, both of them smiling. Emily's hair messy, her face tired but glowing. Daniel had taken that photo. He remembered it clearly. He stared at it for a moment. Then he looked away. He went to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, but he didn't drink it. He just held it, standing at the counter like he didn't know what to do next. His phone buzzed. Daniel froze. He stared at it on the counter. The screen lit up. Claire. He didn't pick it up right away. His body reacted first. His heart sped up. His shoulders tightened, like he was bracing for bad news. He forced himself to breathe. Then he opened the message. "I hope I didn't overstep earlier." Daniel read it twice. The word sat there, careful and restrained, like she was giving him an exit. He stared at the screen for a long time before typing. "You didn't." He paused. Then he added, "Thank you." He stared at the message again. It felt too vulnerable, too direct. He almost deleted it. But he didn't. He sent it. A few seconds passed. Then her reply came. "Good. I'm glad. I wasn't sure if I should have said anything." Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He didn't know how to respond without turning it into something awkward. So he wrote the truth. "I'm glad you did." He sent it before he could second-guess himself. Silence. Daniel set the phone down, but his eyes stayed on it like it might explode. A minute passed. Then another message. "I don't usually do that either. Talk to strangers. But you looked familiar." Not your face, just your expression. Daniel swallowed. He felt his throat tighten again. He typed slowly. I've been told I look tired. Claire replied almost immediately. You do. But that wasn't it. Daniel stared at the screen. His chest felt heavy. Not painful. Just full. He typed. What was it then? There was a pause this time. Then her message appeared. You look like you were holding your breath. Daniel read that one longer. Because it was true. He didn't even realize how true until she said it. He typed back. I think I have been. Another pause. Then, me too. Daniel sat down at the kitchen table, his glass of water still untouched. The quiet in the house felt different now. Not empty. Just quiet. He looked at the phone again. He didn't want to ask too much. He didn't want to pull her into his life too fast. He didn't want to become a burden. But he also didn't want to lose this. Not because he needed romance. Because he needed proof that honest people still existed. He typed carefully. Would you want to meet again? Not tonight, just sometime. He stared at it. He almost deleted it. Then he sent it. He waited. His heart beat hard enough that he could feel it in his throat. Finally, her reply came. Yes, just that. One word. Daniel stared at it for a long time. Then he exhaled slowly, like his lungs had been locked tight for hours. He didn't smile. Not fully, but something softened in his face. He stood up, rinsed the glass, and set it in the sink. Then he turned off the kitchen light and walked upstairs. He paused outside Noah's room, listening. Noah was still asleep. Daniel leaned his forehead against the doorframe for a moment, eyes closed. He didn't feel healed. He didn't feel safe. But he felt like something had shifted, a small crack in the wall he'd built. And through it, a little air had gotten in. He went to his bedroom. Emily's side of the bed was still made. He didn't sleep there. Not really. He lay down on the side, staring at the ceiling. His phone sat on the nightstand. He didn't touch it again. But he kept thinking about that single word. Yes. And as he drifted into sleep, he realized something quietly, almost reluctantly. He was afraid. But he wanted it anyway. Daniel met Claire 3 days later. Not because either of them suggested a date. They didn't call it anything. They just agreed on a time and a place, like two people trying not to jinx something fragile. It was a small diner near the edge of town. Nothing charming about it. Plastic menus, cracked vinyl booths. A waitress who looked like she'd been working there longer than Daniel had been alive. Daniel liked it immediately. No one went there to impress anyone. When he walked in, Claire was already seated. Same calm posture. Same quiet expression. A mug of coffee in front of her, untouched. She looked up when he entered, and something in her face shifted slightly. Not a smile exactly, but an easing. He slid into the booth across from her. You're early, she said. Daniel glanced at the clock behind her. So are you. Claire nodded like that was fair. For a moment they just looked at each other. It felt strange, seeing her in a different place. The park had made her seem like part of the rain, like she belonged to that quiet. Here, under fluorescent lights, she looked more human, more tired. You look less wet today, she said. Daniel exhaled through his nose. I tried. Claire's mouth curved slightly. A waitress appeared before either of them could speak again. What can I get you? She asked. Daniel ordered without thinking. Coffee. Black. Claire didn't even look at the menu. Same. The waitress left. Daniel rested his hands on the table. He could feel the slight stickiness of the laminated surface. He hated it, but he didn't move his hands. He didn't want to look like he was uncomfortable. He already was. Claire watched him for a moment. You don't have to pretend you're relaxed, she said. Daniel blinked. I'm not pretending. Claire's eyes stayed on him. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Then he nodded once. Okay, he admitted. Maybe I am. Claire nodded like she'd expected that answer. I don't want this to feel like an interview, she said. Daniel let out a breath. Me neither. Another pause. Then Claire asked, Did you tell anyone you were meeting me? Daniel frowned. No. Claire nodded. Gin. Daniel hesitated. Why? Claire stared down at her mug. Because people ruin things, she said. Daniel felt the truth in it immediately. Not because he was cynical, because he'd lived it. People asked questions, they formed opinions, they inserted their own fears into your decisions. He nodded slowly. My sister knows I met someone, he said. Claire's eyes lifted. Does she know who? No, Daniel said. Just someone. Claire's shoulders eased a little. Daniel studied her face. You? He asked. Claire shook her head. No. Daniel didn't push. The waitress returned with coffee, setting down their mugs with a dull clink. She poured cream automatically into a small cup beside Claire's, even though Claire hadn't asked for it. Claire didn't correct her. She just stared at it like it was an unnecessary detail in a world already full of them. The waitress left again. Daniel took a sip. The coffee was too strong, slightly burnt. It tasted like a place that didn't care about being liked. He liked it. Claire didn't drink right away. She wrapped both hands around the mug instead. Daniel watched her fingers. You said you had an appointment, he said quietly, remembering. Claire's eyes flicked up. Yes. He waited. Claire didn't answer further. Daniel didn't ask again. The silence stretched, but it wasn't hostile. It was just cautious. He realized she was the same as him. She didn't offer personal details like they were party favors. She gave them carefully. Daniel cleared his throat. I thought about what you said, he admitted. Claire tilted her head slightly. About what? About still loving her, Daniel said. Claire didn't react. Daniel stared at his mug. I've had people tell me I'm not ready, he said, even when I don't talk about Emily. They just sense it. Claire nodded slowly. Daniel continued, voice quieter. They look at me like I'm carrying a bomb, he said. Like I'll explode in the middle of dinner and ruin their lives. Claire's mouth tightened faintly. Daniel swallowed. And sometimes I think they're right, he added. Claire's gaze stayed on him. Why? Daniel hesitated. Because sometimes he did explode. Not in public, not in front of Noah, but alone. In the shower, in the kitchen, in the car after dropping Noah off at school when the radio played a song Emily used to hum. He stared at the table. Because it's still there, he said. All of it. Claire nodded, like she understood. I don't know how to make room for someone else without feeling like I'm disrespecting her. Daniel admitted. Claire's fingers tightened around her mug. You're not disrespecting her, she said. Daniel looked up. Claire's voice remained calm, but there was something firmer in it now, like she wasn't speaking from theory. Like she knew. Love doesn't work like that, she said. It doesn't erase, it just changes shape. Daniel held her gaze. He didn't argue, because he wanted to believe her. Claire finally took a sip of her coffee. She winced slightly at the taste, but she didn't comment. Daniel watched her carefully. Can I ask you something? He said. Claire nodded. Yes. Daniel hesitated anyway. Do you ever feel angry? He asked. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly, not in irritation. In thought. Yes, she said. Daniel nodded slowly. He didn't ask why. He assumed it was about the infertility. About the way life had cut something out of her future without permission. But Claire surprised him. I feel angry at people who pity me, she said. Daniel blinked. Claire stared down at her mug. They act like I'm fragile, she continued, like my life is smaller than theirs. Her voice stayed even, but Daniel could hear something under it, something contained, something sharp. They say things like, at least you have freedom, Claire said, or you can travel. Like that replaces something. Daniel's throat tightened. He started. Claire's eyes lifted. Insulting? Daniel nodded. Yeah. Claire exhaled softly. I don't want anyone's sympathy, she said. I want them to stop treating me like I'm unfinished. Daniel felt something settle in his chest. Unfinished. He knew that feeling too. People treated him like he was halfway through a story they didn't want to read. Like he came with a tragic prologue and no guarantee of a good ending. Daniel's fingers moved unconsciously, brushing the edge of his ring. Claire's eyes flicked down to the motion. You still touch it when you're thinking, she observed. Daniel froze slightly. He hadn't noticed. He pulled his hand back, embarrassed. Sorry. Claire shook her head. Don't apologize, she said again. Daniel stared at her. He realized she said that a lot. Not as a slogan, as a correction, like she was tired of watching people shrink themselves. Claire leaned back against the booth. So, she said, changing direction, tell me about Noah. Daniel's face softened without him meaning to. He didn't smile fully, but his eyes warmed. He's loud, Daniel said. Claire nodded, waiting. He asks questions constantly, Daniel continued. Not normal questions. Weird ones, like why do cats blink slowly, or if dinosaurs had birthdays. Claire's lips curved slightly. Daniel felt himself relax a little more. And he hates socks, Daniel added. Claire's eyebrow lifted. Hates socks, Daniel nodded. Like it's personal, like socks are an insult to him. Claire let out a quiet laugh then. Small, but real. The sound hit Daniel unexpectedly. He hadn't heard her laugh before. It wasn't pretty or forced. It was quick and unguarded, like it slipped out before she could stop it. Daniel stared at her for a second too long. Claire's expression shifted, the laughter fading. She looked down at her mug again, almost self-conscious. Daniel looked away. I missed that, he admitted suddenly. Claire glanced up. Miss what? Daniel hesitated. Laughing, he said, without thinking about it. Claire nodded slowly. She didn't offer comfort. She didn't say it would come back. She just let the truth sit there. The waitress came by again, refilling their mugs without asking. Daniel watched her pour coffee like it was the only thing she'd ever done. Then, she walked away. Claire stirred her coffee with the little plastic spoon, though she still didn't add cream. Daniel watched her do it. You don't have to stir if you're not putting anything in, he said. Claire paused. Then she looked at him. I know, she said. Daniel waited. Claire's eyes dropped back to the mug. It's just something to do, she added. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood that too, a small motion to keep your hands busy so your mind didn't drown you. He looked at her again. Do you work? He asked. Claire nodded. Yeah. What do you do? She hesitated. Not long, just enough for Daniel to notice. I work in administration at a fertility clinic, she said. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't mean for it to. Claire saw it anyway. Her eyes stayed on him, steady, not defensive. Daniel swallowed hard. That's, he started. Cruel, ironic, painful. He didn't say any of those words. Claire nodded once. Yeah, she said, that's what people usually say. Daniel's face tightened. I didn't mean, I know, she interrupted gently. It's just what it is. Daniel stared at her. He tried to picture it. Claire, surrounded every day by pregnancy announcements, baby photos, women crying in hallways, couples clinging to hope like it was oxygen. It felt like standing in a burning house and pretending you weren't choking. How do you handle that? He asked quietly. Claire's gaze drifted to the window. Rain streaked down the glass. I don't, she said. Daniel's chest tightened. Claire looked back at him. I just do it, she corrected. Because I need a job. Because I'm good at it. Because sometimes I can help people when they're scared. She paused. And because leaving would feel like admitting I lost. Daniel didn't speak. He felt a strange admiration, but it wasn't romantic. It was something heavier. Respect mixed with sadness. Claire's fingers tapped lightly against the mug. You know what's funny? She asked. Daniel shook his head. Claire's voice stayed quiet. The clinic is full of women who feel like their bodies betrayed them, she said. And then there's me, sitting behind the desk watching them get angry at themselves. And all I can think is, she stopped. Daniel waited. Claire's jaw tightened. All I can think is that I would trade places with them in a second, she finished. Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. Claire didn't look away. I hate myself for thinking that, she admitted. Daniel shook his head slowly. Don't, he said. Claire stared at him. Daniel's voice grew firmer. Don't hate yourself for that, he repeated. That's just honest. Claire's eyes softened slightly. She didn't respond, but her shoulders dropped a fraction, like she'd been carrying that thought alone for a long time. Daniel took another sip of coffee. He could feel his pulse in his throat. He wasn't used to conversations like this. Conversations where people said the ugly truth and didn't apologize for it. He looked at Claire. You don't have to do this, he said. Claire frowned. Do what? Talk to me, Daniel said. Sit here with me. Listen. Claire stared at him, then leaned forward slightly. I'm not doing you a favor, she said. Daniel blinked. Claire's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were intense now. I'm here because I want to be, she said. Because I'm tired of shallow conversations. Because I'm tired of pretending my life is fine. She paused. And because you didn't look at me like I was defective. Daniel felt the words land deep. He didn't argue, because he hadn't, and he realized, with a quiet kind of dread, that he wanted to keep not looking at her that way. He wanted to keep being the person who didn't flinch. Claire sat back again. The diner's fluorescent light buzzed faintly overhead. Daniel stared at his mug, then asked quietly, Can I tell you something? Claire nodded. Yes. Daniel's voice dropped. I'm scared Noah's going to forget her, he admitted. Claire didn't speak. Daniel's fingers tightened around the mug. And then I feel guilty, he said, because part of me wants him to. Part of me wants him to forget, so it hurts less. His voice grew rough. And then I feel like I'm betraying Emily. Claire's eyes held his. She didn't pity him. She didn't tell him he was a good father. She just said, very softly, that makes sense. Daniel's throat tightened. He stared down at the table, blinking hard. The words didn't fix anything, but they stopped him from feeling insane. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside the diner, the world stayed ordinary. People ate fries. A man at the counter argued with a waitress about his bill. Someone's phone rang. And Daniel sat across from Claire, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not hope, not happiness. Something quieter, the sense that he could say the truth out loud and still be allowed to exist. After the diner, Daniel expected them to say goodbye in the parking lot. That would have been the normal thing. A polite ending, a clean separation. But Claire didn't move toward her car right away. She stood under the awning watching the rain hit the pavement. Her hands were in her coat pockets. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, not from the cold, but from something inside her that never fully relaxed. Daniel stood beside her, keys in his hand. He didn't speak. He didn't want to push her into leaving. Claire finally turned her head. Do you have to go right away? She asked. Daniel's chest tightened. He thought about Noah. He'd told Megan he'd pick him up later, after dinner. There was still time. No, he said. I don't. Claire nodded like she'd been afraid he would. There's a bookstore down the street, she said. It's small, quiet. Daniel hesitated. Not because he didn't want to go, because he hadn't been in a bookstore since Emily was alive. Emily loved bookstores. She used to drag him into them and wander slowly, fingers tracing spines like she was reading with her hands. The memory hit him fast and sharp. Claire watched his face. You don't have to, she said. Daniel swallowed hard. It's fine, he replied. His voice came out steadier than he felt. Let's go. They drove separately. Daniel followed her car through wet streets, taillights glowing red in the rain. When Claire pulled into the small lot beside the bookstore, Daniel parked a space away. He sat in his car for a second before getting out. He didn't know why he felt nervous. It wasn't a date. It wasn't anything. But he knew better now. He knew moments like this could shift into something that mattered, and he didn't trust his own ability to handle it. He stepped out, pulled his coat tighter, and walked toward the entrance. Claire was already inside. The bookstore smelled like paper and dust and faint coffee. The lighting was warm and dim, the kind that made the outside world feel far away. A bell chimed softly as Daniel entered. Claire stood near the front table, scanning a display of used novels. She looked more at ease here, like she knew how to exist among quiet things. Daniel moved slowly through the aisles, not rushing to stand beside her. He didn't want to crowd her. He ran his fingers lightly along the spines of books, reading titles without absorbing them. Claire turned down an aisle and disappeared. Daniel stayed where he was, letting himself breathe. The store was empty except for them and an older man behind the counter reading a newspaper. He didn't look up. Daniel wandered into the fiction section without thinking. His eyes caught on a book Emily used to love. Same cover, same worn font. His hand froze midair. He didn't pick it up. He just stared at it like it might speak. He could almost see Emily standing beside him, her hair falling into her face, her fingers already pulling the book off the shelf with excitement. The memory came so vividly that his stomach tightened. He turned away quickly, walking to the next aisle as if movement could outrun the feeling. He found Claire near the back, in the nonfiction section. She held a book in her hands, not reading it, just gripping it like she needed the weight of it. Daniel approached slowly. Claire looked up when she sensed him. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she nodded toward the shelves. "You look like someone who doesn't know what to do with books," she said. Daniel exhaled a small, almost laugh. "I used to," he admitted. Claire studied him. "What changed?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. He could have said time. He could have said life. He could have said Noah. But the real answer sat heavy in his chest. "Emily loved them," he said. Claire's face softened slightly. Daniel stared down at the floor. "I stopped going," he added. "It felt pointless." Claire nodded once. "I get that," she said quietly. Daniel watched her fingers tighten around the book she held. "What are you looking at?" he asked. Claire lifted it slightly, showing him the cover. It was a book about parenting. Daniel blinked. Claire didn't smile. "It's not for me," she said. Daniel didn't ask why she was holding it then. He didn't need to. He just nodded slowly. Claire stared at the cover for a moment longer, then slid it back onto the shelf with a careful motion, like she didn't want to damage it. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't know how to respond to that kind of quiet pain. There was no comfort that didn't sound cheap, so he said nothing. They stood in silence, surrounded by shelves and paper and other people's stories. Claire turned and walked down the aisle, and Daniel followed. At the end of the aisle was a small children's section, low shelves, bright covers, stuffed animals sitting on top. Claire stopped there. Daniel's breath caught. He hadn't realized where they were heading. Claire stared at the children's books for a long time. She didn't touch them. She didn't pick one up. She just looked. Daniel stood beside her, hands in his pockets, feeling something in his throat that he didn't want to name. Finally, Claire spoke. "My mother used to buy books for my future kids," she said. Her voice was calm but thin. Daniel turned his head slightly toward her. Claire's eyes stayed on the shelf. "She had a whole box," Claire continued. "Picture books, classics, little notes inside the covers. She wrote things like, 'For when you're older,' or 'Read this one first.'" Her jaw tightened. Daniel didn't move. "She stopped after my diagnosis," Claire said. She never said why. She just stopped. Claire inhaled slowly. "And I still have that box," she added. "In my closet." Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't know what to do with that confession. It felt too private to touch. Claire's fingers brushed lightly against the edge of a book. She didn't pull it out, just traced it. "Sometimes I open it," she admitted, "just to make sure it's still there." Daniel felt something heavy settle in his chest. Claire's voice stayed quiet. "I hate myself for it," she said, "because it's embarrassing. It's pathetic." Daniel turned fully toward her. "It's not," he said firmly. Claire's eyes flicked to him, sharp. "You don't get to decide that," she replied. Daniel didn't flinch. He held her gaze. "No," he said, "but I get to tell you it isn't pathetic." Claire's mouth tightened. For a moment Daniel thought she might snap back. Instead, she looked away. Her shoulders rose and fell slowly. Daniel watched her, feeling the tension in his own body. He realized he was angry. Not at Claire, at the world, at the randomness of it, at how easily life took things from people and then demanded they keep functioning like it was nothing. Claire stepped away from the children's shelf and moved toward a small table with coloring books and puzzles. She picked up a puzzle box, stared at it, then set it down again, quickly, like the cardboard burned her. Daniel didn't follow too close. He gave her space. Claire spoke again, quieter now. "I didn't invite you today because I wanted company," she said. Daniel frowned slightly. "Then why?" Claire swallowed. "Because I needed to prove something to myself," she said. Daniel waited. Claire turned to face him fully. "I needed to see if I could sit across from a man who has a child," she said, "and not feel like I'm suffocating." Daniel's stomach tightened. Claire continued before he could respond. "I thought maybe if I spent enough time around it I'd stop feeling jealous," she admitted. Her voice dropped lower. "But it doesn't go away," she said. "It just hides until I'm alone." Daniel's jaw clenched. He didn't know what to say. Because he understood jealousy too. He understood how shameful it felt to want something someone else had, even if you loved them. Claire stared at him. "I don't want to resent you," she said. Daniel felt his chest tighten. "You don't," he said. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't know that," she replied. Daniel took a slow breath. He chose his words carefully. "I think if you resented me," he said, "you wouldn't be standing here telling me this." Claire stared at him for a long moment. Then her shoulders dropped slightly, like she was tired of fighting her own thoughts. Daniel's voice stayed low. "I don't want someone to pity me," he said, "and I don't want someone to look at Noah like he's a reminder of what they can't have." Claire flinched, just slightly. Daniel continued, "Because the truth mattered. But I also don't want someone who lies," he said, "who pretends they're fine and then disappears when it gets real." Claire's gaze held his. Daniel swallowed. "So if you're telling me the truth," he said, "then I'd rather hear it now." Claire's jaw tightened. She nodded slowly once. "Okay," she whispered. For a moment, the bookstore felt too quiet, like even the air was listening. Claire looked down at her hands. "When I was 26, she said, "I had surgery. I thought it was minor. The doctors acted like it was routine." Daniel watched her face. Claire's voice stayed even, but her fingers trembled slightly. "When I woke up," she continued, "my mother was sitting beside my bed crying." Daniel's stomach tightened. Claire's eyes lifted to his. "She wouldn't look at me," Claire said, "and I knew something was wrong." Daniel's chest tightened. Claire swallowed hard. "They told me later," she said. "They said they had to remove things, that it was necessary, that I should be grateful. They caught it early." She paused. Daniel didn't interrupt. Claire's voice grew quieter. "And then they said I'd probably never have children," she finished. Daniel felt the sharp ache in his chest. Claire's eyes didn't water. She didn't cry, but her face looked pale, like the memory still stole oxygen from her. Daniel's hands clenched in his pockets. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Claire stared at him, almost like she didn't understand the question. "What could I do?" she replied. Daniel didn't have an answer. Claire looked away again. "I went back to work," she said. "I smiled at my friends. I congratulated them when they got pregnant. I held their babies. I acted like I was fine." Her voice sharpened slightly. "And then I went home and screamed into a pillow so my neighbors wouldn't hear me," she said. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Claire's jaw clenched. "And after a while," she said, "I stopped screaming, because it didn't change anything." Daniel's chest felt heavy. He didn't know how to hold what she was giving him. It felt too raw, too personal. But Claire kept speaking anyway. People tell me I'm strong, she said, almost flat. They say I handle it well. Her eyes flicked to his. I don't handle it well, she said. I just handle it quietly. Daniel stared at her. That sentence hit him harder than anything else she'd said, because it was him, too. Claire exhaled slowly, then looked past him toward the front of the store. I shouldn't have told you that, she murmured. Daniel stepped closer without thinking, not touching her, just closing the space slightly. Yes, he said softly. You should have. Claire's eyes met his. For a moment she looked startled, like she hadn't expected him to want the truth. Daniel's voice was low. I'm tired of people pretending, he said. It doesn't help. Claire's throat moved as she swallowed. Then she nodded once, slowly. Okay, she whispered again. Daniel looked around the bookstore. The shelves, the children's section, the warmth. He felt something in his chest that scared him. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something that could become real if he wasn't careful. He didn't know if he could afford that. Claire stepped away first, walking toward the counter. Daniel followed. She bought a small paperback without telling him what it was. Daniel didn't ask. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. They stood by their cars for a moment, quiet. Claire looked at him. I'm not good at this, she said. Daniel almost smiled. Neither am I, he replied. Claire nodded once. Then she hesitated, her gaze flicking briefly to his hand. To the ring. Daniel didn't hide it. Claire's voice was quiet. If we keep doing this, she said, it's going to hurt. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Yes, he said. Claire stared at him. Do you still want to? She asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He thought about Noah asleep in the car, about Emily's photo on the shelf, about Claire standing in the children's aisle, not running, not pretending. He swallowed hard. Yes, he said again. I do. Claire nodded. Okay, she whispered. Then she got into her car and drove away. Daniel stood there for a moment after she left. The parking lot was empty now. He opened his car door and sat inside. Noah wasn't there. He'd come alone this time. That was another decision he hadn't told Claire about. He rested his head back against the seat. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. He didn't know what he was doing, but he knew he wasn't done. And that scared him more than being alone ever had. Daniel didn't tell Noah about Claire. Not because he thought Noah would say something strange or childish. He probably would. Noah had a way of asking the one question adults spent their whole lives avoiding. Daniel didn't tell him because saying her name out loud in the house felt like introducing something fragile into a place that had already been broken once. And because he didn't trust himself, he didn't trust that this would last. The next week moved slowly. Daniel and Claire texted sometimes. Short messages. Simple ones. Nothing romantic. Nothing that demanded anything. Mostly check-ins. How was your day? Busy. Same. Noah wouldn't eat dinner. What did he want? Pancakes. At 7 p.m. He's right. That one made Daniel smile. It was strange how little it took. No long conversations. How little it took. No long conversations. No dramatic confessions. Just small lines appearing on a screen that made the day feel less heavy. Then, on Thursday, Megan called. Daniel was in the kitchen trying to pack Noah's lunch. Noah was at the table swinging his legs, humming to himself, distracted by a toy dinosaur he'd insisted needed to come to school. Daniel held the phone between his shoulder and ear. What's up? He asked. Megan didn't waste time. You're coming to Mom's this weekend, right? She said. Daniel froze slightly. Their mother's house. Sunday dinner. The thing they all pretended was normal. Daniel stared at the sandwich bread in his hand. Yeah, he said carefully. I guess, Megan sighed. Don't do that, she said. Don't say I guess like you're 15. Daniel's jaw tightened. I'm busy, he said. Megan's voice sharpened. We're all busy. Daniel didn't answer. Noah looked up at him. Who is it? Daniel covered the phone with his hand. Aunt Megan. Noah waved at the air like Megan could see him. "Hi, Aunt Megawan," he sang. Megan heard it anyway and softened a little. "Hi, Noah," she called through the phone. Noah giggled and went back to his dinosaur. Megan lowered her voice again. "Mom's been asking," she said. "She wants to see you, and she wants to see Noah." Daniel's throat tightened. He knew what that meant. His mother didn't just want to see Noah. She wanted to inspect him, to check if Daniel was doing okay, to decide if her grandson looked too sad, too quiet, too fatherless. Daniel hated that word. Fatherless. Daniel hated that word. Fatherless. Like Noah was missing something essential, and everyone could see it. "I'll be there," Daniel said. Megan hesitated. Then she said, "You're not bringing anyone, are you?" Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't answer fast enough. Megan caught it. "Oh my God," she said. "There is someone." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "It's not like that," he said. Megan sounded amused now. "So there is." Daniel exhaled slowly. "It's just someone I met," he said. "We've talked a couple times." Megan's voice softened. "That's good," she said. "That's really good." Daniel didn't respond. Megan paused. "Are you happy?" she asked. The question hit him wrong. Too big. Too sharp. Daniel stared at the bread. "I don't know," he said honestly. Megan didn't push. "Okay," she said quietly. "Well, if you want to bring her Sunday, you can." Daniel's stomach tightened. "No," he said quickly. Megan's tone shifted. "Why not?" Daniel glanced at Noah. Noah was still humming, oblivious. Daniel lowered his voice. "Because Mom will make it weird," he said. Megan laughed softly. "Yeah, she will." Daniel's jaw clenched. "And because I don't want Noah meeting someone unless—" Daniel stopped. "Unless what?" "Unless it was serious? Unless it was safe? Unless Daniel was sure he wasn't about to lose someone again?" Megan waited. Daniel finished quietly. "Unless I'm sure." Megan's voice softened further. "That's fair," she said. Then she added, "But don't hide her like she's something shameful." Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm not," he said. Megan didn't argue. "I'll see you Sunday," she said, then hung up. Daniel stared at the phone for a moment after the call ended. Noah looked up again. "Daddy," he said, "can my dinosaur have a sandwich too?" Daniel blinked. Then he nodded slowly. "Sure," he said, "he can have one." Noah smiled like that was the best news he'd heard all day. Daniel packed the lunch quietly, his mind elsewhere. He didn't like the way Megan's words stuck to him. Don't hide her like she's something shameful. He wasn't ashamed. He was scared. That night, after Noah was asleep, Daniel sat on the couch with the lights off except for the lamp near the bookshelf. Emily's photos sat on the shelf like it always did. Daniel stared at it longer than usual. He didn't know why he did it. He wasn't trying to punish himself. He wasn't trying to cling to the past. He just needed to remember what it felt like to be loved without fear. His phone buzzed on the couch cushion. "Claire, are you okay?" Daniel frowned. He hadn't texted her. He hadn't said anything. He stared at the message, surprised. Then he typed back, "Yeah? Why?" A pause. Then, "I don't know. You've been quiet today." Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't realize she noticed things like that. He stared at the screen. Then he typed slowly, "My sister called. Family stuff." Claire replied quickly, "That sounds like stress." Daniel almost smiled. "It is." Claire's next message came after a longer pause. "Do they know about me?" Daniel stared at the question. He could have lied. He could have said no. But Claire didn't feel like someone you lied to. She'd smell it immediately, he typed. "Not really. Just that I met someone." Claire didn't reply right away. Daniel stared at the screen, feeling the familiar anxiety crawl up his spine. He hated waiting. Waiting for someone to pull away. Finally, Claire's message appeared. "Okay. Just that." Daniel exhaled slowly. He typed, "Are you upset?" There was a pause, then, "No, I just don't want to be someone you keep in the dark. Daniel stared at it, his jaw tightened. He wasn't keeping her in the dark, he was keeping her safe, but maybe those weren't as different as he wanted them to be. He typed, I'm not trying to hide you. Claire replied, I know, but I don't want to be treated like something temporary. Daniel felt his chest tighten hard. He set the phone down for a moment, staring at the wall. Temporary. That word hit him deeper than it should have, because he was the one who thought she might be temporary. Not because of her, because of life. Because everything he loved seemed to disappear. He picked the phone back up. His fingers hovered. He typed carefully. You're not temporary to me. He stared at the sentence. It felt too intimate, too soon, too exposed. He almost deleted it. Then he thought about Claire in the children's aisle. Claire saying she handled things quietly. Claire asking him if he still wanted to keep doing this even though it would hurt. He hit send. Silence. Daniel felt his pulse in his throat again. Then her reply came. Okay. But this time, the word didn't feel like a wall. It felt like she was breathing. Daniel swallowed. He typed again. Do you want to meet this weekend? Claire replied almost immediately. Yes. Daniel stared at the screen. Then he added, I can't do Sunday. Family dinner. Claire's response came after a moment. That sounds awful. Daniel let out a small laugh. It is, Claire wrote back. Saturday then. Daniel typed. Saturday. Then, without thinking too much, he added, you can come to my house if you want. We can just talk. No pressure. He stared at the message after he sent it, heart pounding. He hadn't invited anyone into his home since Emily died. Not like that. Friends came by sometimes, briefly. Megan, his mother, but not someone new. Not someone who could leave behind a new kind of memory. He felt sick. A few seconds passed. Then Claire replied, Okay. Daniel stared at it. Then another message came. I'd like that. Daniel sat there in the dim light, staring at the phone like it was something dangerous. He glanced toward the stairs. Noah's room. He felt a sudden, sharp fear. Not about Claire hurting Noah. Not about Claire being cruel. He feared the opposite. He feared Noah liking her. He feared Noah getting attached. He feared Claire becoming real, because if she became real, she could be lost. And Daniel didn't know if he could survive that again. On Saturday, Claire arrived at noon. Daniel had cleaned the house too much, vacuumed twice, wiped counters that didn't need wiping, moved Emily's things into drawers like he was erasing evidence. He hated himself for it. When the doorbell rang, Daniel's stomach twisted. Noah was at Megan's again. Daniel had told himself it was because he wanted privacy. But the truth was simpler. He wanted to meet Claire in his home without Noah watching. Without Noah making it real. Daniel opened the door. Claire stood on the porch in a dark coat, hair pulled back, hands holding a small paper bag. She looked nervous. He could see it in the way she stood, slightly stiff, like she wasn't sure if she should step forward or step back. Daniel's chest tightened. Hi, he said. Claire nodded. Hi, he said. Claire nodded. Hi. She held up the bag. I brought pastries, she said. Daniel stared at it. He didn't know why the gesture hit him so hard. It was so normal, so domestic, like she belonged here. He stepped aside. Come in, he said. Claire walked inside slowly. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something else Daniel couldn't identify. The faint scent of Noah's shampoo. The ghost of Emily's perfume in the hallway. Claire paused just inside the door. She didn't comment on the house. She didn't look around with that nosy curiosity people had. She just stood still for a moment, but she was listening to the silence. Daniel shut the door behind her. Claire turned her head slightly. It's quiet, she said. Daniel nodded. Noah's not here. Claire's gaze flicked to him. Oh, she said softly. Daniel felt the weight of that word. He didn't explain. He just gestured toward the kitchen. Coffee, he asked. Claire nodded. Eh. They walked into the kitchen. Daniel moved automatically, filling the kettle, pulling mugs from the cabinet. His hands felt clumsy. Claire set the pastries on the counter. She watched him without speaking. Daniel could feel her eyes on his back. It wasn't uncomfortable. Not exactly. It just made him aware of everything. The kettle began to heat, a low hum filling the room. Daniel leaned against the counter, trying to look relaxed. Claire stood across from him, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the counter. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Claire spoke quietly. "You have a nice home," she said. Daniel swallowed. "It was Emily's," he replied before he could stop himself. Claire's face didn't change. She didn't look away. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't know why he'd said it like that, like a warning. Claire nodded slowly. "I figured," she said. Daniel stared at her. Claire's voice stayed calm. "It feels like someone lived here with love," she said. Daniel felt something tighten behind his ribs. He looked down quickly, pretending to adjust the kettle. He didn't trust himself to speak. The kettle clicked off. Daniel poured the water, the sound loud in the quiet kitchen. He handed Claire a mug. Their fingers brushed briefly. Claire didn't pull away. Daniel felt the contact like an electric shock. He stepped back, holding his own mug too tightly. They stood there drinking coffee, not sitting down yet, like neither of them knew what sitting would mean. Then Claire asked, "Can I see a picture of Noah?" Daniel froze. The question was simple, but it felt like a door opening. Daniel stared at her. Claire's expression stayed steady, but there was something careful in her eyes, like she knew she'd stepped onto something sensitive. "You don't have to," she added quickly. Daniel swallowed hard. He nodded once. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, you can." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His hands were steady, but his chest felt tight. He scrolled through his photos until he found one from the week before. Noah wearing a firefighter hat, grinning, missing one front tooth now. Daniel held the phone out. Claire took it gently, like she was afraid to drop it. She stared at the picture for a long time. Her face didn't change much, but Daniel saw her throat move as she swallowed. "He's beautiful," she said quietly. Daniel's chest tightened. "Yeah," he murmured. "He is." Claire handed the phone back carefully. Daniel put it away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Claire looked at him. "I'm scared," she admitted. Daniel stared at her. "Of what?" he asked. Claire hesitated. Then she said it. "Of loving something I can't have." The words fell into the kitchen like a weight. Daniel didn't move. He felt the air leave his lungs slowly. He didn't know what to say, because she was already standing inside the life she'd been denied. His life. And Daniel realized with a quiet, sinking dread he had invited her into the one place he couldn't protect her from. Daniel didn't answer right away. Claire stood across from him in his kitchen, holding her coffee with both hands like it was steadying her. The house felt smaller than it had an hour ago. He swallowed. "You're not taking anything from me," he said finally. Claire's eyes stayed on him. "That's not what I meant," she replied. Daniel knew that. He knew she wasn't accusing him, but the words had hit somewhere defensive. He set his mug down on the counter. "What did you mean?" he asked. Claire looked past him for a moment, toward the hallway, toward the staircase that led to Noah's room, toward the life Daniel had built out of loss and routine. "I mean," she said slowly, "if I care about you, I care about him too." Daniel's chest tightened. "And I don't know what that does to me," she finished. Silence filled the space between them. Daniel thought about Noah's small hand gripping his sleeve at night, the way he asked if Daniel would be alone forever, the way he sometimes stared at families in grocery stores without saying anything. He felt a flicker of fear. Not that Claire would hurt Noah, that Noah would want her, and that she might not stay. Daniel rubbed a hand over his face. "I didn't want him here today," he admitted. Claire's expression didn't change, but her shoulders shifted slightly. "I guessed," she said. Daniel nodded. "I needed to see if this was real before I—" He stopped. "Before I let you near him." He didn't finish the sentence, but it hung there anyway. Claire nodded once. That's fair, she said. Daniel looked at her carefully. You're not offended? He asked. Claire shook her head. No, she replied. If I had a child, I'd do the same. Daniel studied her face, searching for resentment. He didn't find it. He found something else. Restraint. Claire set her mug down and leaned back against the counter. I don't want to replace anyone, she said quietly. Not Emily. Not anyone. Daniel felt the word Emily hit the air differently when it came from Claire. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't jealous. It was careful. He nodded slowly. I don't want that either, he said. Claire held his gaze. But I also don't want to stand outside your life forever, she added. Daniel's stomach tightened. He understood. He just didn't know how to bridge that gap without risking everything. Claire exhaled softly. I don't expect to meet him tomorrow, she said. Or next week. I'm not asking for that. Daniel's shoulders eased slightly. I just need to know, she continued, that if this goes somewhere, I'm not a secret. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. You're not a secret, he said, more firmly than before. Claire tilted her head. Then what am I? She asked. The question wasn't aggressive. It was honest. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't know. He knew he felt something when he saw her name on his phone. He knew he thought about her when he packed Noah's lunch. He knew he felt steadier when she said things like, don't apologize, but he didn't know what to call it. I don't want to rush it, he said. Claire nodded slowly. I don't either, she replied. I just don't want to float. Daniel frowned slightly. Float? Claire looked down at her hands. Be something undefined, she clarified. Something that disappears quietly if it gets uncomfortable. Daniel inhaled slowly. I won't disappear, he said. Claire's eyes lifted. You can't promise that, she said gently. Daniel's jaw tightened. I can promise I won't walk away just because it's hard, he replied. Claire held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. That's enough, she said. The tension in the room shifted slightly. Not gone, just steadier. Daniel gestured toward the living room. Do you want to sit? He asked. Claire nodded. They moved to the couch. Emily had picked that couch. Gray fabric, soft cushions. Daniel had thought it was too big at the time. Now it felt exactly the right size for the life he had left. Claire sat at one end. Daniel sat at the other. Space between them. Not wide, not intimate. Claire looked around slowly. There were photos on the wall. Daniel and Emily on their wedding day. Noah as a baby. A family photo taken months before the accident. Claire didn't stare at them too long, but she didn't avoid them either. Daniel watched her. I didn't take them down, he said quietly. Claire glanced at him. I didn't think you would, she replied. Daniel swallowed. Some people told me I should, he admitted. Claire's expression shifted slightly. Why? She asked. Daniel shrugged. They said it might make it hard for someone new. Claire looked at the wedding photo again. It would, she said. Daniel's chest tightened. Claire turned back to him. But not because it's wrong, she added. Because it's real. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. He felt exposed sitting here with her, surrounded by his past. Claire leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on her knees. I don't want to erase her, she said quietly. Daniel's throat tightened. I couldn't love someone who asked me to, she continued. Daniel looked at her sharply. Claire's eyes held his. But I also can compete with a memory, she said. The words landed carefully, but they still hit hard. Daniel stared at the floor. You wouldn't be, he said. Claire's voice stayed calm. You don't know that. Daniel inhaled slowly. She's gone, he said. Claire didn't flinch. Yes, she said, but she's not absent. Daniel felt that one. He looked around the room. She was right. Emily lived in the way Daniel folded laundry, in the way Noah said certain words, in the way the house was arranged. Claire's gaze softened. "I'm not afraid of her," she said quietly. "I'm afraid of being second to her." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. He hadn't thought of it that way. He hadn't thought of what it would feel like to step into a life that already had a love story carved into it. He leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I don't want to rank people," he said. Claire nodded slightly. "You don't have to," she replied, "but feelings don't listen to logic." Daniel let that sit. The room felt heavy, but not hostile. After a while, Claire stood up. Daniel's stomach dropped slightly. She walked toward the bookshelf. She stopped in front of the photo of Emily holding baby Noah. She studied it quietly. Daniel didn't move. He felt like he was watching something sacred and dangerous at the same time. Claire reached out and touched the edge of the frame lightly. "She looks kind," she said. Daniel's throat closed. "She was," he replied. Claire nodded. Then she did something Daniel hadn't expected. She turned to him and said, "Tell me about her." Daniel's heart thudded hard in his chest. "What?" he asked. "Tell me about her," Claire repeated gently. Daniel stared at her. Most people avoided that. They steered conversations away from Emily like her name might contaminate the air. Claire was asking to step into it. He swallowed hard. "She was loud," he said after a moment. "Not in a bad way. She just filled rooms." Claire smiled faintly. "She sang constantly," Daniel continued. "Badly." Claire's smile grew a little. "She hated folding laundry," he added. "She'd leave it in a pile for days." Claire glanced toward the neatly folded stack on the chair. Daniel followed her gaze and almost laughed. "Yeah," he said, "I do it now." Claire nodded. "What did she love most?" Claire asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Noah," he said. His voice cracked slightly. Claire's expression softened. "And before him?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. "Books," he said. "Sunlight. Coffee. Me." The last word came out quietly. Claire didn't react strangely to it. She just nodded. Daniel looked down at his hands. "I didn't know you could lose someone like that," he admitted. "One second they're there. The next." He stopped. Claire stepped closer. "You don't have to finish it," she said. Daniel nodded slowly. They stood facing each other in the living room, the space between them thinner now. Claire looked at him carefully. "I'm not here to replace her," she said again. "I'm here because I like you." The simplicity of it made his chest ache. Daniel swallowed. "I like you too," he said. It felt strange, saying it out loud. Claire's eyes searched his face. "Then we go slow," she said. Daniel nodded. "Slow," he agreed. Claire hesitated. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was careful. Daniel froze for half a second. Then his arms moved around her. He hadn't held someone like this in 2 years. Her body was warm, solid, real. He felt her exhale against his shoulder. Daniel closed his eyes. He didn't feel fireworks. He felt steadiness. And under that steadiness, fear. Because this felt like something that could matter. Claire pulled back slightly but didn't let go completely. Her hands rested lightly against his chest. He could feel his heartbeat under her palm. "It's okay to be scared," she said softly. Daniel nodded once. "So are you," he replied. Claire's lips curved faintly. "Yes," she said. They stood like that for a moment longer. Then Claire stepped back fully. "I should go," she said. Daniel didn't argue. He walked her to the door. When he opened it, cool air slipped inside. Claire paused on the porch. "Next time," she said carefully, "I can meet Noah." Daniel's chest tightened, not in panic, in inevitability. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. Claire searched his face, making sure. Then she stepped down off the porch. Daniel watched her walk to her car. Before she got in, she turned back. He was still standing there. She gave him a small nod. Then she drove away. Daniel closed the door gently. The house felt different now. not invaded. Shifted, he walked back into the living room and looked at the photo of Emily again. He didn't feel guilt the way he expected. He felt something more complicated, like he was standing at a crossroads he hadn't planned to reach. Upstairs, Noah's empty room waited for him. Tomorrow would be Sunday. Family dinner. Questions. Judgment. Daniel stood in the quiet house and realized something. He wasn't just afraid of losing Claire. He was afraid of choosing her. Because choosing meant risking everything he'd rebuilt, and he didn't know if he was strong enough to do that twice. Sunday dinner felt like a performance Daniel hadn't rehearsed for. He drove to his mother's house with Noah in the back seat, kicking his feet against the car seat and humming to himself. The sky was gray, low, and heavy, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. Daniel's hands stayed tight on the steering wheel. Noah leaned forward slightly. "Are we going to Grandma's?" he asked. "Yes," Daniel said. Noah smiled. "Grandma has cookies," Noah said, like it was an unquestionable fact. Daniel didn't answer. He just nodded once. He pulled into the driveway and parked behind Megan's car. His mother's house looked the same as it always had. White siding, perfect flower beds, a porch swing no one ever sat on, a home that looked like nothing bad had ever happened inside it. Noah unbuckled with impatience, then waited for Daniel to open the door. As soon as Noah stepped out, he ran toward the porch, shouting, "Grandma!" Daniel followed more slowly, closing the car door carefully. He could already feel the familiar tightness in his chest, the pressure that came from stepping into a place where everyone thought they had the right to comment on his life. The front door opened before Noah even knocked. His mother stood there, smiling wide, arms already reaching. "Oh, my baby," she cooed. Noah threw himself into her arms. Daniel stood behind them, holding the diaper bag Noah didn't need anymore, but Daniel still carried out of habit. His mother looked up at him. Her smile faltered just slightly. There it was, that quick scan, that assessment. She looked at his face like she was checking for cracks. "Daniel," she said, her voice warm but careful. "Hi, Mom." She stepped forward and kissed his cheek. Her perfume hit him immediately. Floral, too strong. It always made him think of childhood, of being told to sit still and behave. "Come in," she said. Daniel stepped inside. The house smelled like roast chicken and cleaning spray. The floors were polished. The furniture looked untouched. His mother's house was always like this, like life was something you could keep tidy if you tried hard enough. Megan appeared from the living room holding a glass of wine. She raised her eyebrows at Daniel, like she was silently asking, "You okay?" Daniel gave a small nod. Megan walked over and kissed Noah's head. "Hey, monster," she said. Noah giggled and ran toward the living room where toys waited. Daniel followed him with his eyes until Noah disappeared around the corner. Then Daniel's mother touched his arm. "You look tired," she said. Daniel almost laughed. Almost. "I'm fine," he replied. His mother's eyes lingered on him. "You should eat more," she said. Daniel didn't respond. Megan rolled her eyes behind their mother's back. Daniel saw it and felt a small flicker of relief. Megan was the only one who still felt real in this house. They sat at the dining table soon after. His mother placed food in front of Daniel like he was still 16, like he couldn't feed himself, like care was something she could force onto him if she tried hard enough. Noah ate quickly, then asked for cookies. After dinner, his mother said. Noah pouted dramatically. Daniel watched him with a small softness in his chest. Megan started talking about her job. Daniel listened, nodding at the right places. He didn't absorb much. His mother watched him the entire time. Daniel could feel her eyes on him like weight. Finally, she said it. "So," she began, voice too casual, "Megan tells me you've been going out." Megan shot Daniel a look that said, "Sorry." Daniel's jaw tightened. He kept his face calm. "I've been trying," he said. His mother nodded. Her lips pursed. "That's good," she said. "That's very good." Daniel waited. He knew it wouldn't stop there. His mother leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice like Noah couldn't hear, even though he was sitting right there. "Have you met anyone nice?" she asked. Daniel glanced at Noah. Noah was busy stabbing a piece of carrot with his fork like it was an enemy. Daniel looked back at his mother. "Yes," he said quietly. Megan's expression softened, almost proud. His mother's face tightened, just slightly. "Oh," she said. "Really?" Daniel nodded once. His mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What's her name?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Claire," he answered. His mother repeated it like she was tasting it. "Claire," she said. "And what does Claire do?" Daniel felt the irritation rise in his chest. He kept his voice controlled. "She works in administration," he said. His mother nodded. "Is she divorced?" she asked. Daniel's jaw clenched. "No," he replied. "Never married." His mother pressed. "No." His mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "And how old is she?" Megan cleared her throat loudly, trying to interrupt. But his mother didn't stop. Daniel stared at his plate. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "why are you asking this?" His mother blinked, offended. "I'm just interested," she said. "I'm your mother." Daniel's fingers tightened around his fork. Megan spoke up. "Maybe Daniel doesn't want to discuss his dating life, like it's a background check," she said. His mother's face tightened. "I'm not interrogating," she snapped. "I just want to make sure." "Make sure what?" Daniel asked. The words came out sharper than he intended. The room went quiet. Noah looked up, sensing the change. His mother's eyes widened slightly. Daniel's chest rose and fell slowly. He hated this. He hated how easily she could push him into anger. His mother's voice softened again, too quickly. "I just want to make sure Noah is protected," she said. Daniel felt something hot flare in his chest. Noah. Always Noah. Always used as the excuse. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Noah is protected," he said. His mother's mouth tightened. "You don't know her," she said. Daniel's jaw clenched. "I'm getting to know her," he replied. His mother shook her head slightly. Daniel could see it. The judgment. The fear. The assumption that Daniel was desperate and would bring anyone into their lives. His mother's voice lowered. "You have to be careful," she said. "Noah needs stability. He doesn't need confusion. He's already been through enough." Daniel's throat tightened. He stared at her. She said it like she was the only one who understood Noah's pain. Like Daniel hadn't been there every night. Noah woke up crying. Like Daniel hadn't held his son while he screamed for his mother. Megan's face had gone pale. She looked at Daniel like she was silently begging him not to explode. Daniel didn't move. He spoke slowly. "Don't talk to me like I'm reckless," he said. His mother blinked, surprised by his tone. "I'm not," she insisted. "You are," Daniel said. His voice stayed calm, but it took effort. His mother's face tightened. "I just don't want you making decisions because you're lonely," she said. That one hit him. Daniel stared down at his plate. Lonely. Like it was shameful. Like it made him weak. He felt his throat tighten and forced himself to breathe. Noah's voice cut through the tension. "Can I have cookies now?" Noah asked, oblivious. Daniel's mother immediately turned her smile back on. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, standing quickly. She moved to the kitchen, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Daniel sat frozen. Megan reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. "You okay?" she mouthed. Daniel nodded once, but he wasn't. His mother returned with cookies on a plate, setting them down like nothing had happened. Noah grabbed two immediately. His mother sat back down, smoothing her blouse. Then she looked at Daniel again, softer now. "Daniel," she said, "I know you miss Emily." Daniel's stomach tightened. He didn't respond. His mother continued, voice quiet. "I miss her too," she said. "She was like a daughter to me." Daniel's jaw clenched. He hated when she said that. Emily wasn't like a daughter. Emily was his wife. The woman he loved. The woman he loved. The woman he lost. His mother leaned forward slightly. "But you can't bring her back," she said, "and Noah deserves a mother figure." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. Megan's eyes widened. She looked horrified. Daniel felt his hands go cold. His mother kept talking. A child needs a woman in the house, she said. A stable presence, someone who can. Stop, Daniel said. The word came out low. His mother blinked. Daniel's voice sharpened. Stop talking, he repeated. The room went silent. Noah looked up again, cookie halfway to his mouth. Daniel's mother stared at him like she couldn't believe he'd spoken to her that way. Daniel's chest rose and fell. He stood slowly. His chair scraped against the floor, loud. His mother's voice trembled. Daniel, I'm leaving, Daniel said. Megan stood too. Daniel, wait. Daniel looked at Megan. His eyes were steady. I'm not doing this, he said quietly. Megan nodded slowly, understanding. Daniel turned toward Noah. Noah, he said gently, forcing his voice to soften. Get your shoes. Noah blinked. But I'm eating cookies, he protested. Daniel crouched slightly to meet his eyes. We're going home, Daniel said. Noah frowned, confused. Daniel glanced up at his mother. She was pale now. You're overreacting, she whispered. Daniel stared at her. No, he said. I'm reacting the right amount. Just later than I should have. His mother looked like she might cry. Daniel didn't care. Not because he was cruel, because he was tired. Noah slid off his chair, grabbing his dinosaur and dragging his feet toward the hallway where his shoes were. Daniel watched him go, then looked at Megan. Thanks for trying, he said quietly. Megan nodded, eyes glassy. Daniel turned and walked toward the door. His mother followed, her voice urgent now. Daniel, you can't just leave like this, she said. We're family. Daniel paused at the door. He turned back. His voice was low, controlled. Family doesn't get to say whatever they want, he said. His mother stared at him. Daniel's throat tightened. And Noah doesn't need a mother figure, he added. He needs people who respect his father. His mother's lips trembled. Daniel didn't wait. He opened the door. Cold air hit his face. Noah came running up with his shoes half on, stumbling. Daniel helped him quickly, hands steady. Then he picked Noah up and carried him to the car. Noah started talking immediately. Grandma was mad, he said. Daniel buckled him into his seat. She wasn't mad, Daniel said quietly. She just said something she shouldn't have. Noah frowned. Daniel shut the car door gently. He got into the driver's seat and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. His hands were shaking now. Not from anger, from adrenaline, from the realization that he had finally done something he'd avoided for 2 years. He'd chosen a boundary. He'd chosen himself. And as he pulled out of the driveway, he realized something else. He hadn't just defended Claire, or Noah, or Emily. He had defended the life he was still trying to build. And it terrified him. The drive home was quiet. Noah talked for the first few minutes, asking why Grandma's cookies were better than the store ones, and whether dinosaurs liked cookies too. Daniel answered when he could. His voice sounded steady. He was proud of that. Halfway home, Noah got quiet. Daniel checked the rearview mirror at a red light. Noah was staring out the window. Daddy? He asked. Yeah. Are you sad? The question landed softly, but it hit hard. Daniel swallowed. A little, he admitted. Noah nodded slowly, like that made sense. Grandma gets sad too, Noah said. Sometimes she cries when she looks at Mommy's picture. Daniel's chest tightened. I know, he said. Noah kicked his feet gently against the seat. Are you going to cry? Noah asked. Daniel almost smiled. Not right now, he said. Noah accepted that. He leaned back and watched the sky as they drove. When they got home, Daniel carried Noah inside even though he didn't need to. Noah was getting too big for that. But Daniel did it anyway. He needed the weight. Inside, the house felt still. Daniel set Noah down. Can I watch cartoons? Noah asked. For a little while, Daniel replied. Noah ran toward the living room. Daniel stayed in the entryway for a moment, staring at the wall like he'd forgotten why he was standing there. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He closed his eyes briefly before pulling it out. Claire, how was dinner? Daniel stared at the message. He didn't want to unload everything onto her. He didn't want to make her feel like the cause of a fight she hadn't witnessed. He typed slowly. It was tense. The three dots appeared almost immediately. Because of me? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because my mother doesn't know how to stay out of things. A pause. Then, what did she say? Daniel stared at the screen. He could lie. He could minimize it. But Claire had asked for honesty from the beginning. He owed her that. She said no one needs a mother figure. The reply took longer this time. When it came, it was short. Oh. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He typed quickly. I told her to stop. Another pause. Then Daniel. He stared at the screen, waiting. I don't want to be the reason you fight with your family. Daniel exhaled sharply. You're not. It wouldn't have come up if I didn't exist, she replied. Daniel's fingers hovered. He could feel the old instinct rising. The instinct to smooth everything over, to say it was nothing, to protect everyone from discomfort. He didn't do that. It would have come up eventually, he typed. She thinks I should find someone who fits her idea of stable. Claire didn't respond right away. Daniel could feel something shifting under the surface of this conversation. Finally, her message came. And I don't fit that. Daniel's jaw clenched. She doesn't know you. But you do, Claire replied. The question wasn't written, but it was there. Daniel leaned back against the wall. Noah's cartoon laughter echoed faintly from the living room. I'm still getting to know you, he typed carefully. But I know enough. There was a long pause. Daniel's heart began to pound. Then her message appeared. Do you want more children? Daniel froze. The question felt like stepping onto thin ice. He stared at the words. He hadn't thought about it directly. Not in months. Maybe not in 2 years. After Emily died, the idea of more children felt impossible. Unreal. Like asking him to rewrite a story that had already ended. He typed slowly. I don't know. He stared at that, then added, I haven't let myself think about it. Claire didn't respond immediately. Daniel felt his throat tighten. When her message finally came, it was longer than usual. I need to know if I'm building something that has an expiration date. Daniel felt the words in his chest. Expiration date. He closed his eyes. He imagined a future he hadn't allowed himself to picture. Claire in the kitchen. Claire at the park. Claire standing in Noah's room during a nightmare. Then he imagined her standing there years from now, wanting something he couldn't give, or worse, wanting something he could, but was too afraid to try. His phone buzzed again. I don't expect you to decide right now, Claire wrote. I just can't walk into something knowing it ends in resentment. Daniel's chest tightened painfully. He pushed off the wall and walked into the living room. Noah was sprawled on the floor, laughing at something animated and loud. Daniel watched him for a long moment. His son's hair stuck up in the back. His socks were already half off. Daniel sat down on the couch and stared at his phone. He typed. I don't want to promise you something I'm not sure about. He hesitated, then added, but I also don't want fear to decide for me. The typing dots appeared almost instantly. Fear of what? Daniel swallowed. He typed slowly. Losing someone again, the message sent before he could soften it. There was a long pause. Then, I'm not Emily. Daniel's chest tightened. I know, he replied. Another pause. Then, but I could leave. Or I could get sick, or something could happen. That's not something you can control. Daniel stared at the screen. She was right. He hated that she was right. His fear didn't make loss impossible. It just made connection harder. Noah looked up from the floor. Daddy, look, he said, pointing at the TV. Daniel forced a small smile. That's cool, he said. He looked back down at his phone. If we do this, Claire wrote, we do it knowing there are no guarantees. Daniel's chest felt tight, almost painful. He typed. I know. Another message came. and I don't need a baby to feel like my life has meaning. Daniel felt his breath catch. But I need to know that if loving you and loving him hurts sometimes, you won't pull away because it's complicated. Daniel stared at those words for a long time. He thought about his mother's voice, about the way she'd said Noah needed a mother figure, about how quickly fear could turn into control. He thought about Claire in the bookstore. Claire standing in the children's aisle and not running. He thought about himself, about the way he'd spent 2 years holding his breath. He looked at Noah again. Noah glanced back at him, smiling. "Daddy?" Noah said. "Yeah? Are you okay now?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I'm getting there," he said. Noah seemed satisfied with that answer. Daniel looked back at his phone. His fingers felt steadier now. "I won't pull away because it's complicated," he typed. He paused, then added, "I've already done complicated. I can do it again." He stared at the message. Then he sent it. The reply didn't come immediately. Daniel set the phone down on the coffee table and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His heart was beating hard, but not from panic. From decision. The phone buzzed. He picked it up. "Okay," Claire wrote. Then, after a second, "Then we try." Daniel stared at the words. Not "we see." Not "we'll see what happens." "We try." He felt something shift inside him. Not a dramatic release. Not a sudden flood of hope. Just a quiet alignment. He typed back, "We try." He set the phone down again. Noah climbed onto the couch beside him without asking, curling into Daniel's side like he always did. Daniel wrapped an arm around him automatically. Noah rested his head against Daniel's chest. Daniel looked around the living room. The photos were still on the wall. Emily was still part of this house. Nothing had been erased. But something had expanded. Daniel didn't feel like he was replacing the past. He felt like he was allowing space for something alongside it. He kissed the top of Noah's head. Noah mumbled something unintelligible and kept watching cartoons. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. He was still afraid. He knew there would be hard days. Jealousy. Grief. Conversations that hurt. He knew loving Claire would mean watching her carry something he couldn't fix. He knew introducing her to Noah would change everything. But he also knew something else now. He wasn't holding his breath anymore. And for the first time since Emily died, that felt like enough. He opened his eyes and reached for his phone one more time. "Saturday," he typed. A few seconds later, Claire replied, "Saturday." Daniel set the phone down. Outside, the sky finally started to clear. Inside, nothing looked different, but something inside him had shifted, steady and quiet. Not toward certainty, toward willingness. And that, he realized, was the first real step he'd taken in 2 years.